Hey, welcome into the Late Night Gamecock Show. My name is Matt Anderson, and joining me as always is Alex Jones of thebigspur.com. So, in Gamecock land, I guess you just can't have consecutive or 2 out of 3 good days, I should say. Tonight on the show, we're going to talk about the Gamecock men dropping their season opening game to North Florida. Obviously, the women were able to secure that one against Michigan, which was great. We'll talk a little bit about that. And after that, we're going to put a bow on the South Carolina Texas A&M game. I think that being a top 10 team in Williams-Brice under the lights deserves a little bit more talk than we've given it so far. I'm going to ask Alex, should the Gamecocks be ranked right now? They are not ranked in the AP poll or the college football playoff poll. And then we're going to talk a little bit about recruit reactions after the win in Williams-Brice Stadium. We're going to preview this weekend's matchup against Vanderbilt. And then lastly, everyone's favorite segment, we will talk about our best bets of the weekend. And I know Alex Jones especially is looking forward to that segment. But with that being said, we're going to roll our introduction. And then after that, we'll be right back with all the hard-hitting Gamecock content you're looking for. See you in a sec.
Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show from Chief Sports, South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of thebigspur.com.
Well, last night was a tough one for Gamecock fans. Everyone was riding high off of the victory over A&M, top 10 team in Williams-Brice Stadium. So much fun for Gamecock fans to be a part of that. And then the other shoe dropped, and the men's basketball program lost to North Florida last night. I know Alex Jones is in the building. Alex, let's go ahead and actually, before we get to the men's, let's talk about the women's. I know that the women were down at halftime. Chloe Kitts had a really good game. I think she had 19 points, and coincidentally enough, so did Colin Marie Boyles. But I was not able to watch the women's game. I do hope to try and get that on my DVR here pretty soon and watch it maybe as the week progresses. But good on the girls. Very happy they were able to secure a win in Las Vegas. Ashlyn Watkins not being a part of the team right now maybe had an impact in the score. I think most Gamecock fans were expecting a 20 or 30 point victory, but the Gamecock women got it done. And moving on to the men, Alex, what did you see last night in Colonial Life Arena?
Yeah, it was just one of those games where, South Carolina didn't have a lot go right for them. And you think about, the missed free throws that they had, and the 3-point shooting, wasn't what it needed to be. And, kind of a key moment in that game, you scored with, I think, a little over 4 minutes left in that game and went through a stretch there at the end. I think it was nearly 3 minutes long where you didn't score and kind of allowed North Florida to hang around. And we let a team like North Florida hang around, they're good enough to, get you. And they did, North Florida executed better towards the end. And it was a rough showing here for the first game, and they got a lot of things they got to clean up.
Yeah, and Alex, you know me. I'm a Ken Palm guy. I'm an analytics guy. The Gamecocks were favored to win that game by 16 points. The Gamecocks just never pulled away. There were moments in the game where I thought they might be able to, but the second half is just what I think actually killed their chances last night. I mean, look, I'm never going to be a guy that likes to harp on an individual player. I think that Colin Marie Boyles is probably pressing a little bit to start the game. It was missing shots he normally makes. And maybe that's just the first game of the season. I mean, he still ended up with 19 points, I think 7 or 8 rebounds. Had a really big game. But, and Alex, you and I were texting last night. I think this is where you kind of miss the Talon Cooper. And Talon, we said all last year, kind of stirred the drink for the Gamecocks. I don't think it's a situation where you really missed BJ Mack. I don't think it's a situation where you missed Michi Johnson. You look at Michi last night. He plays for Ohio State now, and he didn't have a great game, even though Ohio State won the game against Texas last night. But It just seemed like they didn't have the chemistry that you would expect in the first game of the season, knowing that they had an exhibition, they had the secret scrimmage against NC State. For me, I don't know what it was. I think that the second half just kind of got away from the Gamecocks, even when they bumped it out to a 6-point lead, 7-point lead, with less than 10 minutes left in the game. Look, I've been on the other end of this. I know that when a guy banks in a 3-pointer to give their team a lead, it's kind of demoralizing. It's like, what more do we have to do when they're hitting shots? But, for me, Alex, and I want to get your take on it, I'm just going to say a couple more things. The defensive intensity that I think the Gamecocks played with last year did not look like it was there in the second half. And, with the turnovers, like I can live with 10 turnovers in a game. I can live with that. But I can't live with getting out rebounded and just not the want to that the Gamecocks seemed to not show in the second half. It was like they were waiting for someone to take over. And I don't know. Your takes.
Yeah, and kind of to your point about the defensive intensity, Lamont Paris after the game said, it's not okay. It's okay not to play well, is that's going to happen from time to time. But I thought as competitors, I thought they dominated us, and I think that kind of speaks to your point right there. I think the intensity maybe just wasn't quite there, and I think North Florida won a lot of those.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's a lot of what happened last night. I know that when you let a mid-major stay in the game, especially the first game of the season, all of a sudden confidence grows on that other sideline. And even though the Gamecocks found themselves in a favorable situation at the end of the first half, I think like with 8 minutes to go, they were in the bonus. With I think in the second half, it was the same kind of situation. I just don't know. Like if the Gamecocks are quite there yet. And look, this game hurts. It hurts in a lot of ways. Like from an analytics standpoint, I don't know if North Florida is necessarily going to be a Q4 loss at the end of the year. Look, the Gamecocks dropped like 38 points in KenPom last night. KenPom closely follows the net rankings. But at the same time, North Florida jumped from like 250 to 204 in KenPom. So they got a lot of credit for that win. We have to see what North Florida does the rest of the season. Friday night, I think, becomes pretty big for the Gamecocks. It's another home game. And Alex, I know you'll be there. I can't remember who they're playing, but it's a situation where the Gamecocks need to have some urgency. And look, if I was a betting man, I don't know what the line's going to be, but when analytics shift that much after the first game of the season, I would imagine the Gamecocks might be 12.5, 14.5, 16-point favorites again. I would think that the Gamecocks will probably cover that spread because they do have more talent than they showed. Colin Murray Boyles easily could have had 30, 35 points last night. And it was just one of those things where the game didn't start off well. I think at the end of the second half, especially, there were some questionable calls that I think the Gamecocks need to find a way to power through. I know there were a lot of boos coming through the Colonial Life Arena. Even on replay, I mean, there were times when it just seemed like North Florida took advantage of a situation, and that's what you have to do in basketball. And you have to do the same thing in football and baseball as well. You have to rise above the frustration, and I'm not sure that the Gamecocks rose above the frustration. I see Matt Sellers talked about on chat row free throws. Yeah, free throws were a big deal, but I don't think the Gamecocks took enough free throws. I don't think they were as aggressive as they could have been. And if maybe they had pushed the envelope a little bit more in the first half, driven a little bit more, tried to force contact, I think that the Gamecocks are a better free throw shooting team than they should, but that sample size is so small right now. So Alex, what else did you take away from it?
Yeah, it's just one of those things too. Like, I think the 3-point shooting will come, and I'm going to ask before I had internet issues and had to dip out for a minute, but what the starting five, I wonder if they're going to, kind of mess around with that a little bit if they kind of change that heading into South Carolina State. I think you can make a case that Cam Scott maybe could enter the starting lineup. The 2 games that South Carolina's had so far, I think he's come in and really provided a spark. And, I kind of wonder if that's where you go. Maybe, Jacoby Wright did have a lot of good moments last night in that game. But I wonder if he's been really good off the bench in his career. So I wonder if you really kind of want to keep him in that spot there. But I'd be really interested to see if they kind of add Cam Scott to that starting lineup because I think he seems to provide a spark. And, with the South Carolina State game on Friday, I think you have to expect that it was maybe a wake up call a little bit for the team that, you got to come out with intensity every night because, in college basketball, anybody can be anybody. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they come out in that game against South Carolina State.
Yeah, and I think on the flip side, Jamari Thomas, obviously has a lot of experience in him, but he doesn't have experience at this level. And I think that losing to Talon Cooper or BJ Mack, those guys that were in their last year of eligibility, and especially Talon Cooper coming from the Power 5 level, obviously he started at Morehead State, then he went to Minnesota, then he came to South Carolina, even though he's, a South Carolina kid. There's some pride there. And look, I think that it's a blip on the radar. I really do. But at the end of the day, a loss is a loss, and I understand why Gamecock fans are upset. I would like to see Nick Pringle be a little bit more aggressive. I would like to see him be more of a lob threat. I think that the Gamecock guards are in a position to give him some lobs, and especially playing off Colin Murray Boyles. But I don't know what happened with Nick Pringle last night, but he got a lot of rebounds. He had 9 rebounds, but I think that if he took that aggressiveness that he had rebounding the basketball to the offensive side, that could really unlock a lot for the Gamecocks.
And I wonder if maybe the missed free throws early on for him maybe took that aggression out of him a little bit. He kind of struggled at the line. I think maybe missed his first 3 and made the 4th one. So I think you kind of wonder if maybe that took a little bit of the aggression out, because they did. There were times in that game they looked for him in the post because South Carolina did have the size advantage. And I'm not sure if you mentioned it when I was out, but I mean South Carolina got out rebounded in this game, and that's not something you would expect going against North Florida with the athleticism and the size South Carolina has. So, yeah, I think you got to be a little bit more aggressive in the post, not only from the post players, but just the guards driving the paint, because it seemed that kind of got lost last night as well.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, Alex, like you and I were texting last night after the game, and I sent you a text message, and I said, I sent you a screenshot of the box score. Like that box score should beat North Florida, but being out rebounded and the free throw shooting definitely hurt the Gamecocks. I'm really not upset with the turnovers. Like turnovers happen. Yeah, it's also weird too, and I'm not making excuses for the Gamecocks. Yeah, I mean, I'm not making excuses for the Gamecocks at all, but like it's a tough one for the fans. I think that you told me last night Colonial Life Arena had a pretty good crowd, and it takes the wind out of the sails a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's one of those, I mentioned it being a wake-up call. Like, you want to have that wake-up call with it being coming off a close win. Because, I think we were kind of talking, like, for KenPom numbers. And during the middle of the game, we were talking, like, South Carolina needs to find a way to see if they can get this to double digits. But, then it got to the point where it's just kind of, surviving that game, and they couldn't find a way to do it. And I think it's easier to teach off of those moments that you look at in film off of a win. So, I expected to really kind of not refocus this team, but really maybe lock the team in a little bit more. And, I expect you probably see a really good showing, or a better showing here against South Carolina State on Friday.
Yeah, I agree. And on the flip side of that too is like I'm the biggest analytic guy in the world. I know like the quads like the back of my hand, but the quads don't matter until we're 6 weeks into the season. It looks bad right now, but if you're going to lose a game like that, you'd much rather lose it the very first game of the season than you would, the 13th game or the 11th game of the season, where it's like, okay, now you're going into conference play. I do remember a South Carolina Gamecocks team. I was a ball boy for it. They lost to UNC Asheville, I think, and somebody else, and they went 15-1 in the SEC. So I'm not predicting that, but it still is worth remembering that, you can have opportunities that don't go your way that end up being a lesson learned.
Yeah, and I think it's,
So anyway, I do go ahead.
I was going to say that. No, you're good. I think it's one of those where, it's not a good loss, but South Carolina's schedule is going to provide them opportunities where, they can get things right. They can kind of, that loss will always sit there on their resume. I think we have to be, 100% on that. Like that loss is always going to sit there, but South Carolina does have opportunities. They can get things right to kind of keep on improving that resume. And it's way too early to be talking about resumes and all that. But, for down the road, they have big opportunities where they can kind of, maybe push this one aside.
Yeah, you push it aside, you go beat Indiana, you go beat Clemson, you beat Xavier, and then no one's thinking about this loss going into conference play. But Alex, I do want to tie up the Texas A&M game. Obviously, it was an electric environment inside Williams-Brice Stadium. I think that was the Rocket Sanders that a lot of people anticipated. And like, honestly, for me, Rocket played way better than I could have ever imagined him in a Gamecock uniform, having over 100 yards rushing, almost 100 yards receiving, playing like a bat out of hell. Do you think this is a situation where we can see Rocket kind of take off from here over the rest of the season?
I think so. I think when you look at, I think we saw him play in the LSU game, and we thought like, okay, he really looks like he's getting back to his self that he was at Arkansas when he was an All-American. And a lot of that was he did play well, but LSU didn't have a great run defense. But when you look at this past weekend against Texas A&M, like I think we talked about the bye week being really good for Lenora Sellers. I think it was also really good for him because he was banged up too, and having a bye week where he gets healthy, he looked awesome against A&M. I mean, he was. A lot of credit goes to the offensive line too because they run blocking I thought was really good in that game. But he's really fun to watch run because for a guy his size, he's so quick. And when he's running through the lanes, he can make people miss easily. I mean, he can. There's some A&M really struggle to bring him down in between the tackles too. Like he can run through tackles, he can just make you miss. So I think it's one where he is only up from here from him, and he's got a lot of potential. And he's going to be a guy that he's going to play in the NFL for a long time.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think on the flip side of that too, a lot of Gamecock fans have talked about like the wide receivers combining for 20 yards receiving. But at the end of the day, look at Josh Simon. Look what he did. I mean, that is a guy that we've been talking about for a while that is so difficult to tackle. And like, he's somebody that invites contact. And it was nice to see Lenore Sellers invite contact in that game as well. But at the end of the day, when the Gamecocks pile up 530 yards from scrimmage on offense, take 0 sacks, and just kind of dominate for the first quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter, it's a good sign especially against a team like A&M.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we knew who A&M was coming to this game, and Mike Elko is a great coach. And look at the second half performance for South Carolina, and on both sides of the ball, they just took it up a notch, and especially defensively. Holding that offense scoreless with the way they can run the ball, and Marcel Reed's ability to get out the pocket and make plays from not scheduled plays, and that was just a really good performance overall by the defense, and especially that second half, they were flying around. And I think just the adjustments they made in the second half really just limited what A&M was able to do. And offensively, they kind of capitalized on the opportunities that the defense gave them with those fourth down stops and did what they had to do. And I think it was, they always talk about complementary football, and I think that was the closest that we've seen to it this year.
I agree. And look, I'm seeing some stuff in the chat box. We're definitely going to talk about this Vanderbilt game here in a little bit. We're going to take a break in about 5 minutes. But Alex, I want to get your quick take. The Gamecocks were not ranked in the AP poll nor the college football playoff poll. Just your thoughts.
Kind of surprised, maybe wasn't so surprised by the AP poll. I wasn't sure they're going to be in that, but I kind of thought we'd see South Carolina pop up in the college football playoff rankings tonight, but they didn't, and now they did Vanderbilt, which maybe surprised me a little bit more. I kind of thought they'd be in that 24 range, but when you think about it, I think that may be best for South Carolina. They're a team that really kind of thrives right now with that chip on their shoulder, and I think that's going to be something that's probably mentioned to them just in passing, kind of like, hey, they're still not respecting you. And so I think that's something that they're going to use as motivation here this weekend. I'm sure Vanderbilt would do the exact same thing as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think the Gamecocks should be ranked? Yes, I do. I think that they are one of the top 25 teams in the country based on resume. Take that Ole Miss game and do whatever you want with it. Obviously, the Gamecocks got beat pretty thoroughly by the Rebels. But Ole Miss also they had like 18 timeouts in the game due to players faking injuries. And they've done this in the entire season. So especially when you come off a bye week, you have Rocket kind of banged up, Lenore's kind of banged up, and then you have those amount of stoppages in the game. And look, I think that Lane Kiffin is a better head coach than Shane Beamer right now? Absolutely, I do. And when you give a coach like that those kind of opportunities, then you kind of see what happens. But outside of that, they have a loss by 3 points at home to LSU in a game that even the most ardent, truther in the world would say, wow, I think South Carolina, if Lenore's hadn't got hurt and they didn't have the referees in their back pocket, probably would have won. And then the Alabama game, yeah, the Gamecocks had turnovers. The Lenores had some turnovers. They did not deserve to win the game, but they easily could have. So you really are 7 points away from being 7-1, and just take the Ole Miss game out and say, yeah, the Gamecocks are always going to lose that. But, I think if you look at the grand picture of college football right now, I don't think that any team ranked in the top 25 would like to play South Carolina next week. And that's kind of my judge for if a team is top 25 good or not. I don't think there's a team in the top 10 that would like to play South Carolina this upcoming week after, rolling Oklahoma at Oklahoma, rolling A&M at South at under the lights of Williams-Brice. So we'll see what happens. I think that the Gamecocks should be ranked. They're not, and like you said, I promise you that is locker room board material, and it probably is for Vanderbilt as well. At least Vanderbilt's ranked in the AP poll. But when we come back, I do want to talk a little bit about like recruit reactions and recruits that were at the game for Texas A&M, because I think this is the type of game that can kind of catapult Gamecock recruiting efforts like it did against Tennessee a couple years ago when Spencer just went nuclear. But before we get there, Alex, do you mind dropping a line from our sponsors?
Mike here for one of the better dining options in the capital city. When I first moved there, I asked people around the radio station, where are the best wings? Well, the consensus was D's Wings. That was then. Today, they still have the best wings, but it's so much more now in their new location at 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia. Yeah, they get voted the best wings on a routine basis. Yes, they get voted the best sports bar on a routine basis, but they're not just about wings, and really, they're not just a sports bar. It is a family-run local restaurant and bar with 20 TVs and 25 beers on tap. And how about these daily specials? Every Monday night at D's, you've got 75-cent wings from 4 until closing. Tacos on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, 18 wings and a pitcher of beer for $29. You've also got ribs and oyster bucket specials on Thursday. And no matter how big the party is, 20 or more, no problem. Just call ahead of time and they'll take terrific care of you. They'll do takeout as well. And guess what? A human will answer the phone and take the order. Billy and his staff do an outstanding job. Check out D's 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia.
Dude, I would absolutely love some D's wings right now.
Yes.
I mean, especially I think the commercial said 75-cent wings. There's no sports on tonight unless you're a professional sports fan. But if you want to go watch the election results, head over to D's Wings right now. You'll be among friends. Do you want to give a couple of shout outs here? Matt Sellers has been a loyal listener and loyal commentator on our show. We appreciate you, Matt. Jennifer Williams and Brian Harrison are Gamecock fans, and they are here at least 2 weeks in a row. We appreciate you guys. And then Wesley asks, have the rankings come out tonight? And Alex, I think the rankings released at 7 p.m. So the college football playoff rankings are out. They come out on Tuesdays. I don't know if it's always going to be at 7 p.m., but it was tonight. Obviously, there's a lot of things going around in our country tonight, and maybe they change it up going forward. But so, Alex, I do want to get your take on some recruits that were at the game this past weekend. If you feel like Gamecocks made up any ground, any notable names that were there, and we also have a couple commitments that have happened recently.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you could probably imagine, the recruit reaction from Saturday night's been great. I mean, having an environment like South Carolina had, and it's always going to be, recruits are always going to love the environment. But when you can have, a game like South Carolina put it on the field, like where you can win by 24 points over a top 10 team, that's also going to help. Obviously, with that, with a huge night game, you're going to have a bunch of recruits, and some of the ones had a few official visitors, and one Josh Smith who was one that committed today for South Carolina. Out of Dutch Fork, he's a guy who I think, kind of fits into what Clayton White and those guys are looking for at linebacker. And I think he's going to be a strong addition to this class and maybe has a chance to continue rising the rankings. Then you got Keldon Michael, who's a defensive tackle out of Jones College. And I think he's committed to Liberty, but I think it's, South Carolina made a little bit of a move there in this one. And, when you think about, what this roster is going to need next year, interior defensive lineman is going to be that, just because of all the guys losing with TJ Sanders, Tonka Hemingway, Alex Huntley. They're going to need do some work in recruiting, and then also in the transfer portal. And then, one of the high school wise, one of the bigger recruits that we were monitoring to see if they should have was defensive tackle Kevin Wynn, who's committed to Florida State, a four-star guy of Greene County. He's a guy who they've really been on for a long time, and even before he committed to Florida State, South Carolina was right there. And South Carolina's continued to recruit him hard, and that's one of their top flip guys right now that they're going after. And I think I think it was the second game of the year that he's been to, so it was a huge opportunity for South Carolina to kind of showcase not only the environment but what they can do defensively, because I think they have a lot to sell on that defensive line right now with recruiting.
Yeah, and Xavion Hardy, I think he was in town as well.
Yep.
He's committed to Mississippi State. Jasavion Currents committed to South Carolina a couple, maybe a week and a half ago. He's a 4-star 2026 kid, top 100 level guy. I mean, he's one of the guys, Alex, that you and I have been talking about for a while. So I think South Carolina has so much momentum on the trail right now that you got to be happy with where the Gamecocks stand right now in that regard.
And kind of sticking with Currents too, like he's a guy, a big, tall kid out, and being a guy that's from South Point, South Carolina's had just a few guys who've worked out that've come from South Point High School, and I mean, he looks like he could be just the next one that does that. And the South Carolina's had great tradition with that, with South Point and all Rock Hill guys, and he's a guy they've been recruiting for a long time. It looks like he could be a guy who could potentially come in that 2026 class, and when he gets to South Carolina, could be a guy that can make a big impact right away.
Yeah, and I think it was also big that the Gamecocks got Lex Cyrus in for another visit, an unofficial visit. The Gamecocks wide receiver recruiting right now is just on fire, and I think it's going to continue to be that way going forward. I mean, I think they have 3 4-stars. They got Donovan Murph still in their crosshairs. Jaden Sellers to me is a 4-star all day long, and then obviously I've told this story numerous times, but I was talking to the South Lawrence head coach, and he told me that when Jaden was a freshman, he was the only person that could catch a pass from Lenore Sellers. And that they have chemistry going on right now, because Lenore was a ridiculously talented kid, from the time he was in 9th grade at South Lawrence. So anyway, I'm excited for recruiting. Yeah. I think that Gamecock fans should be excited. Anything else, Alex?
Yeah, I was just going to add with Murph, he's a guy they've kind of put the full court press on for him when they recruit him hard when he's in that 2026 class. Now that he's reclassified, I know all those commits and Mike Furry and Shane Beamer and the rest of the staff, they're going all in on Donovan Murph, and I think they put themselves in a really good spot. He does have the Clemson official visit for the Citadel game, which is, I think, 2 weekends away. It's the weekend before the Carolina Clemson game. So I think South Carolina's put themselves in a good spot there. And, we have a bunch of content. Hale McGranahan, obviously, I got a bunch of great content up on the Big Spur to submit on recruits from the weekend, reaction, all that. So make sure you go out there, go to Big Spur and check it out.
Yeah, you got to check out the Big Spur all the time. Moving on to the Vanderbilt game, Alex, South Carolina is a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under is 45.5 points. Kind of a low over-under, in my opinion. I'm going to go through my statistics, and then I want you to give me your statistics. But, excuse me, So far this year, South Carolina and Vanderbilt have 2 mutual opponents. It's Alabama and it's Kentucky. Obviously, Alabama is 6-2 on the year. One of those wins came against the Gamecocks, and one of their losses came against Vanderbilt. Kentucky is 3-6 on the year. Just looking at the 2 mutual opponents, Vanderbilt averages 30 points per game against those 2 opponents. South Carolina 28. And Vanderbilt gives up 24 points per game against those opponents, and South Carolina gives up 17. This is really interesting to me, Alex, and we'll get your take on it here in a second, but Power 5 opponents, just Power 5, we're not talking about the Akrons, the Old Dominions of the world, and whoever Vanderbilt has played, but Vanderbilt's opponents are 30-21 on the year at the Power 5 level. South Carolina's are 34-18. Vanderbilt's 4-2 against Power 5 opponents. South Carolina is 3-3. I would say that South Carolina's schedule is a little tougher, considering those opponents for the Gamecocks have a 65.3% win percentage, and Vanderbilt's have a 58.8% win percentage. The X factor in this game for me, and we can talk all we want about South Carolina and Rocket Sanders and Lenore Sellers and the wide receivers, Nick Harbor, Mazio Bennett, Josh Simon, the defense for South Carolina. But I feel like everyone watching this show right now already knows everything they need to know about South Carolina. If you're watching this show, you've watched every snap, most likely, for South Carolina this entire season. But what was interesting to me, if you look at Vanderbilt and specifically Diego Pavia, his first 3 games against Power 5 opponents, and this was interesting, Alex, I want your take on it, but he had a 71.2% pass completion rate, 0 interceptions, 2.1 rushes per game, or 21 rushing yards per game, 206 passing yards per game, and 81.3 yards rushing per game, and 3.9 yards a carry. If you look at his last 3 games, and those games have come against Kentucky on the road, Texas at home, and Auburn on the road, he has a 58% pass completion percentage, 143 passing yards per game, which is actually crazy. His last 3 games, Pavia only has 143 yards passing in each of those 3 games. 2 passing touchdowns per game and 1 interception per game. But on the ground, he's only averaging 48 yards per game rushing and 3.5 yards per attempt. So for me, when I look at this game, I think that Diego is the X factor. If he does what he did the first 3 games of the year against a Power 5 opponent, I think South Carolina is going to be in for a game. But if he does what he's done against Kentucky, Texas, and Auburn, I think this could be the best defense that Diego has played this entire season. So, Alex, your thoughts? Oh, we lost Alex again. No worries. So like I was saying, I personally think that South Carolina is going to be the best defense that Vanderbilt has played this entire season. I know that Vanderbilt has a gaudy record. They're 4-2 against Power 5 opponents this entire season. South Carolina, like I said earlier, is 3-3. I think South Carolina's played a tougher schedule. I don't know, and I'm trying to say this the right way. I don't know if South Carolina is going to be the best team that Vanderbilt's played. Obviously, you have the beachable opponent with Alabama. Vanderbilt won that game. They played what I would consider one of the perfect games against Alabama. And South Carolina lost on the road to Alabama. So, yeah, it's tough. I mean, for me right now, I would probably say that South Carolina being a 3.5-point favorite is probably correct. I think that South Carolina is a better team than Vanderbilt. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what happens in Nashville. And Nashville might have 25,000 Vanderbilt fans in attendance. South Carolina will probably travel pretty well, I would imagine. I mean, the momentum in South Carolina is through the roof. But Alex, is your internet better now? Do you want to give your thoughts on the game?
I probably should go ahead and do it before the internet goes back out again because it's giving me all
no
kinds
worries,
of stuff.
No worries.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you look at this Vanderbilt game, we offensively, they're really kind of unique. It's going to be kind of a little bit of a special prep for what they do. I know you mentioned Diego Pavia. He's really been special this year for them. And I think, it's going to be interesting to watch South Carolina's speed against this Vanderbilt offense. I think that's going to be really key with some of the option stuff they run. And you got to be able to contain Pavia, and because when he gets going, he can be really good. And Cedric Alexander, too, their running back's really good. And then Eli Stowers, their tight end's really been his top target. And he, they really, I think he's kind of his, whenever it always feels like Eli Stowers is open. And so they got to, watch out for him. And I think in the run game, you got to control. I think that's going to be this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to think that the Gamecocks defense is going to struggle in any game the rest of the season. I think that they're going to be able to kind of impose their will on a lot of teams. And with the triple option and what Pavia has done the last couple of weeks, I just wonder if the Gamecocks are going to be that kryptonite for Vanderbilt's offense. And look, when you look at his last 3 games, Pavia in particular, he has not performed that well. Maybe the book's out. And it's one of those things where, Georgia Tech ran a triple option all the time. And if a team hadn't seen it in a while, eventually it got figured out. And I think the coaches on South Carolina's sideline are good enough to be able to figure out what Vanderbilt's doing this year. I mean, they have they have a 9-game sample size. So it's not like you're playing them week 3. I'd be a lot more worried about playing Vanderbilt week 3 than week 9. So, Alex, I'll go and give my prediction. I think the Gamecocks are going to have to score 27 points to win the game this week. I think they get to 31, and I think the final score is 31-24, South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm kind of right in that range as well. Clark Lee's kind of taken over that Vanderbilt defense, has done a good job. I think there's some ways that South Carolina can kind of attack that defense. They're going to need another big game from Rocket Sanders and Lenora Sellers, and I think you're going to get that. I think they kind of found some this weekend, with the whole offensive line, with the way the offensive line play, or the whole offense with the way the offensive line. I think one thing you do have to watch is the weather. In this one, it looks like it could rain in this one, and that's going to maybe affect the passing game a little bit. But I think South Carolina kind of keeps it rolling, and I think I'm going to predict South Carolina wins 27-20 in this one.
Yeah, I think this is a very similar game that it was to A&M last week, and not in the sense that South Carolina is going to pull away late. They might. I don't know if they will, but I mean, what we talked about all last week on the different shows we were on, and I think on our show as well, I think we both predicted a game in the 20s for South Carolina A&M, and like Vanderbilt's not going to beat themselves, so you're going to have to beat them, and if you can get them in down a distance, that's difficult. If you can get a 10 to 13 point lead in the game, I mean, you look at the Texas game, and that game was probably closer in the final score than it was throughout the entirety of the game. Vanderbilt got an onside kick, kind of got a touchdown at the end, and they had another onside kick, and Texas won the game. I think that's probably more likely, and I would not be surprised if this was a 31-13 game for South Carolina. I just wouldn't be. So go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, one of the big keys for South Carolina offensively, they got to maximize their possessions, because Vanderbilt, when they have the ball, I think they lead the SEC or right towards the top in time of possession. And once they get the ball, they're going to run it. And then they've been really good in third down conversions. And if you let them, they can hold the ball for a whole game and control that time of possession. So, key South Carolina defensively, get off the field on third down, get Vanderbilt in those long third downs, let your pass rush get after Diego Pavia, and then offensively, make the most of your possessions.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I've just seen the last 3 games, and maybe Diego isn't like actually healthy right now. I've seen some rumors that he might be banged up a little bit, but I mean, you can see in his last 3 games and his numbers, they've definitely gone down, and we'll see what version he is of himself on Saturday. If he's the version of the first 3 Power 5 games, it's going to be a dogfight to the very end. If it's his last 3 games, I think South Carolina can potentially run away with it. So we'll see. But like I said, I'm going to say like 27-20 Gamecocks. Wouldn't be surprised if it was 31-13 Gamecocks. And I would be very surprised if South Carolina loses this game. I will say that. I feel pretty confident the Gamecocks find a way to win, even if it's 23-20, 21-20 type of thing. I think the Gamecocks have proven their mettle so far this year. So, Alex, the last segment we have tonight is everyone's favorite segment, and it's definitely Alex's favorite segment.
Definitely
tonight.
my favorite.
We're going to move on to best bets. So, Alex, last week you had Minnesota -3, Vanderbilt +6.5, Mississippi State -18.5, North Carolina -2.5, and Louisville Clemson under 62.5. My friends and my friend Alex, that is a 5-0 week. If you had just bet $1,000, you might retire right now.
I'm surprised I went 5-0. That when you told me that earlier, that completely surprised me. But I'll take it, and that means I kind of. What's my overall record now? At 30-20, is that what it is?
So your overall record right now is 30-20. If you would just bet like $100 a game, I mean, you would have Christmas paid for right now. And you could just stop.
Man, missed opportunity. That's
so
it's a missed opportunity.
So last week I went 2-3. So I am 26-23-1. I am barely buying Christmas lights this year. It's going to be tough. But Alex is 30-20. I am 26-23-1. Without further ado, Alex, I'm going to let the Vegas beater, go first. What is your first best bet of the week?
All right. First one I have is Ohio State wins, but Purdue covers the 38-point spread.
Woo! 38, really?
Yeah.
That's a lot of points.
I just feel like, I need to make sure that's not a typo on my part. I know it was a big win, but, either way, I think it's one of those where, Ohio State's coming off a big win. Coming off a big win, and I just don't like those big point spreads. I think I've taken a bunch of those so far this year, and I just think they find a way to cover. But Ohio State still wins comfortably.
I would too. I would take that. 38 points is a lot.
It is.
That's over 5 possessions. That's over 5 touchdowns. Like Purdue hasn't been terrible this year. Like they're not the worst team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they haven't been good, but I just still see them covering that.
So my first bet is actually the Miami-Georgia Tech game. In this particular game, Georgia Tech is an 11-point underdog. The over-under is 63.5. And I really wanted to take Georgia Tech plus 11, but I'm going to take the under 63.5 because I think that Georgia Tech is going to make it ugly, going to make it messy. Miami, I don't think they're a top 5 team in the country. And I'm not saying I think Georgia Tech's the top 30 team in the country. I might have thought that at the beginning of the season. Then I saw how Florida State ended up playing. But I'm going to take under 63.5 because that's just so many points. I think it's going to be a 38-18 game. So maybe 61 points or whatever, 38 plus 51 points.
Yeah, I think either one of those bets that you thought about are good. I kind of thought about taking Georgia Tech as well, but I decided not to. But, that is a lot of points. All right, the next one I have is a lot of points. Georgia. Yeah. The next one I have is Georgia covers 2.5-point spread over Ole Miss.
Ooh, really?
Yes.
I have the same thing. I have the same bet.
Really? Okay. I just think it's one of those games Kirby's going to have his guys ready. And I just, I think we kind of saw it with that Texas game. They're really good in these big games. It just feels like this is one of those opportunities again.
Yeah, for me, like we talked about all offseason, like Ole Miss plays closer SEC games than you would think with their high-powered offense. And I think that Georgia defense, I saw the SEC short where the Georgia fan said, well, we don't really start playing defense till the second half, but like I think that Kirby has had enough of it. And look, this is a very, very big game for both teams. I mean, honestly, if Ole Miss loses this game, like forget the college football playoffs. And if Georgia loses this game, it might be forget the college football playoffs. I think that Georgia has more talent. So I'm with you. I'm going to take Georgia minus 2.5 as well. Do you want me to go next or do you want to go next?
You can go ahead.
All right. So this one, I don't know how you feel about it. I don't feel great about it. I think that Florida just unloaded everything they had last week against Georgia. DJ Lightway is probably out for a significant amount of time based on what the announcer said. I haven't looked into his status. So I am taking Texas minus 21.5 at home against Florida. I think that this is the time of year where style points matter. And I think that Texas at home is going to just unleash unfortunate things on Florida.
I thought about that game too, and I forgot about the DJ Lagway news and his injury. And I think that's one that, I'm kind of surprised the line's not a little bit higher in that one.
I'm not surprised the line isn't higher because it's Florida, but I just think Florida's done. They're done.
The defense has gotten their defense has gotten a little bit better, but I just think I don't know what they're going to be able to do. I'm not 100% sure if Lagway's playing one way or the other, but I still think it's a tough game either way.
Do you think any team right now wants to go to Austin, Texas after all their fans threw all the debris on the field against Georgia? They made that call to the SEC office. Like, I think that this is going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah. I mean, and specifically Florida too. Like, I just wonder where they're at. I mean, you got a tough game. I mean, you're close against Georgia and you lost it. And I just think I wonder where their mindset is right now.
Yeah, I mean that's
All
like
right,
my biggest I don't know, but I took it.
so all right, so the third one I have is Clemson wins, but Virginia Tech covers 6.5.
Ooh, okay.
I think
VT
it's going to be about
plus
like a
six and a
field goal
half.
game in this one.
That's another game. Like Blacksburg is not easy to play at,
Yep.
and
Yep.
especially when you kind of I don't know, you smell blood in the water. I'm really interested to see how Clemson rebounds after this game against Louisville. My gut was to take them minus 6.5 and just say they find a way, but I didn't have the courage to do it. But I did bet. I did place a bet on this game as well, Alex, and I took the under 53.5 in this game. I think Virginia Tech's going to look it up. I think that Clemson is going to have maybe a little bit of a hangover. They're going to have something to prove. And either Clemson beats the crap out of Virginia Tech, or it's just Virginia Tech 28-14 game. Clemson has quit. We have to see what version of Clemson this is right now. So I take the under
Yeah.
53.5.
I like the under pick just because Kyron Drones, to Virginia Tech's quarterback, I think he's questionable right now. And I don't think he's against Syracuse. And I mean, so taking the under there is smart because, I mean, even if he's plays, like he may not be 100% in this one.
Yeah. So what is your so you have two more picks left, Alex? Oh no, one more pick. Well, what's your last pick of the week?
I got two more.
I have Oh yeah, sorry. I had Tia. I put Ohio State, and then I never wrote anything. So yeah, you have two more. Go ahead.
All right, so my fourth one is Oklahoma Mizzou. I'm taking the under 41.5 in that.
Okay. 44.5 under
41.
Okay. See, dude, under 41.5.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I have that too. I was confused because I have under 41.5 as well in that game. So I'm right there with you. I know you sent these to me, but I'll be honest, I didn't even look. I was too busy trying to figure out.
I was about to say we have the same exact pick.
Yeah, so we do have the same pick there. So yeah, I'll give you my take on it. Like I really wanted to take the Oklahoma minus 2.5 because it's just so fishy. It seems like maybe Luther Burden might not be playing. Maybe there's an injury we don't know about. Like Oklahoma should not be a 2.5 point favorite at Missouri.
I think it's the Brady Cook. I mean, I wonder if he's playing, and because I think Mizzou opened as a favorite in this one. I can't remember what the number was, but it started to move. And I mean, for Oklahoma to be favored in that one, I think that, just in my opinion, that feels like Brady Cook's not playing then.
And that's why I took the under because I was like, something is happening here. I don't know what it is. I'm not brave enough to take Oklahoma minus 2.5 against a 6-2 Missouri team, but I was like, there is some offensive skill player that is not going to be playing in this one. I don't know who it is, so I'm going to take the under because even 41.5 is so low. Like it's so low.
And I mean, we also know what Oklahoma's offense is too. I mean, they haven't been great, and Oklahoma's defense has been pretty good. So I just see. I mean, I don't see many points being scored in this one.
I mean, it might be a 17-13 game. Like that's what we have to hope for our bet.
Yeah.
What's your last one?
The last one I had was Alabama LSU. I'm taking the over 58.
Bama LSU over 58. I like that because I mean, 58
is going to be a lot of offense
push.
in this one. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of offense.
I like that too. I mean, let's just say 58. So we're saying like 27-30, like it's 57. So we're gonna have to get both teams in the 30s or a blowout. But no, I like that. I mean, I cannot see a defensive just game that's about to happen in this particular matchup. So I mean, who knows? And you can even get overtime in this game where it turns into like 60, 70 points in the game. So well, there you go. There you have it. Our best bets. A reminder, Alex is 30-20 on the season. I am 26, 23-1. Alex is off a 5-0 week. I'm 2-3 last week. Last thing, Alex, I'm seeing some comments here about the basketball game. Guys, it was frustrating. It was frustrating to watch. It was frustrating to be a fan of. So like we are here for you. I do know that it was not what I was expecting. I'll put it that way. I don't think it was what Alex was expecting. But we'll see what North Florida does the rest of the year. Like Alex said earlier, like the first game of the season, you can't just put your head in your knees and just say it's all over. We'll see what happens. But yeah, look forward to Friday night against South Carolina State. The Gamecocks need support. So if you have the opportunity to go to that game, I encourage you to go there, get loud, and get behind the team. And hopefully it's a 40-point blowout, and we can kind of just say all's well that ends well. Let's get ready for Indiana in a couple of weeks. But we thank you all so much for being here tonight. When you give us your time, especially on a night like this with election in the United States, it means more than you know. That your time is the most valuable thing you have. So we appreciate you spending your time with us. We hope that you all have a great rest of the week. Look forward to 4:15, I think, or 4:45 in Nashville.
4:15.
We'll see if the Gamecocks can get bowl eligible. 4:15, bowl eligible is on the line, and we will see you all. We'll probably be on multiple shows throughout the week, but we'll see you all Sunday night to recap everything that happens in Nashville. And we wish you all the best. Have a good one. See you soon.